The most important part of the directed writing questions, which is paper 1, question 3, and paper 2, question 1, is to make sure that you get an even spread of information and details from across the whole extract. Think of trying to build a house for your answer, and the foundation of it is getting enough points per bullet point. Try to find at least 5 details that are relevant. Often adjectives are going to be important signals that there's some important information being included for you. Once you've got 5 things per bullet point, reading the question carefully so you know what those are, then that's giving you your 3 paragraphs that are going to be the body of your answer. The last one is the hardest, deliberately. It's where you have to really show off your best reading skills to figure out what is relevant. So it gets harder on purpose. Grade 9 candidates are going to stand out in the last paragraph. It's a bit like when writing about extracts or poems. How well you deal with the end of the poem or extract shows off how good you are as a candidate. It's the same with these. The last paragraph is crucial. So don't overwrite for the beginning and rush at the end. It'd be better to write a little bit less for the beginning and more at the end. Own words whenever possible. So choose your nouns and verbs especially carefully to make sure that your own words are powerful. People sometimes forget that you are being asked to make inferences and read between the lines as well. So that's the next level. Once you've got your foundation, then you can add on per bullet point 2 examples of you developing the details with your own ideas. Here, think in terms of thoughts and feelings. A development should be about you adding likely thoughts and feelings of the people in the question you've been asked to write about. So this is where you analyze or dig beneath the surface, a bit like saying what a quotation implies or suggests. So let's say that the weather is very hot and humid. Well, development could be that you might start to feel uncomfortable, but you'll just have to push through and show some perseverance. You wouldn't find those ideas in the extract, but they are plausible ones that show you understand it well, and they're going to get you marks for showing your reading skills. On top of that, you always have to bear in mind who you've been told to write as, who you are writing to, and for what reason, and connecting all of those all the time. You want to make sure that the heart of your answer is realistic vocabulary and sentence structures. For paper 1, question 3, you need to be prepared to write a letter, a report, a journal, a speech, an interview, or an article. Whereas for paper 2, question 1, the list is shorter. It's just a letter, a speech, or an article. So focus your attention on learning the correct voice, audience, register, and purpose for these 6 different formats. Each type of writing you might get asked to do has its own specific style to make it realistic. I won't read through all of these, but instead you can just pause or take a screenshot or whatever you want. It's worthwhile knowing what some of the basic features of each genre or format of writing are, so you don't end up being asked to write a magazine article and making it look like a love letter to someone, or being asked to write a diary entry and making it look like a formal report. So just bear in mind that realistic word choices have to be all the way through your piece of writing, from the level of diction up to sentence structure, paragraph structure, signing off a letter, or ending a report with formal recommendations. All of these are factors to consider. I'll demonstrate these through some question walkthroughs later on. Most of them should be fairly self-explanatory. Ends and beginnings of sentences here means sometimes you can repeat the same word or phrase at the start of successive sentences. That's called anaphora. You can also repeat the ends of sentences, and another way of doing it is to make the start of one sentence be the last word of the previous sentence, and you can keep that going for 3 or 4 sentences in a row. You should also note that you don't need to lay out your newspaper article in columns. There's no need for that. You don't get extra marks for it. Don't waste your time. When writing a letter, you shouldn't write your real address in the top right-hand corner, because that's just weird. You could use this mnemonic approach and adapt it so it suits whatever you think are the most important features of each style of writing, but these are the ones I've found helpful, so feel free to use these. You can see what has irritated the examiners marking these papers nationwide, because they have summarized their advice into a handy bullet point list, and basically each of these bullet points means it's something people find hard. So the first one is that VARP, voice audience register purpose, is hidden in the question, and if you don't read it carefully, you'll end up writing as the wrong person, to the wrong person, in the wrong style, for the wrong reason, and not getting the marks that you want. Also, checking details as you plan your answer suggests that some people don't end up with 5 things per bullet point. Instead, they might have a very front-loaded answer, but it trails off towards the beginning and the end. So make a list of the 5 things you're going to use for each bullet point and actually tick them off as you use them. Note that you have to have beginning, middle, and end equally. This is because people at the last bullet point, when they should be at their strongest, end up being at their worst. The material given to you won't be suitable as it is for the task you have been set. It always involves some kind of transformation. So you've got to think, what is the raw material? What do I need to do to it to make it appropriate for what I've been asked to do? You can't have a random list. Everything has to be planned out logically. The sequence has to be strong, especially if you're writing to argue, for example, and don't repeat your points. Once you've used them, that's it. You got the mark, you won't get it again. Editing your response is something they've felt is a weakness. This suggests that spelling, punctuation, and grammar needs careful attention, especially on the writing paper. 25 marks of the available 40 will be coming to do with this. It might not be officially a big part of the mark scheme, spelling, for example, but it can create an overall poor impression of your entire answer. So be less likely to endear you to them. Extend and develop relevantly a number of the ideas you include. This means that some people just have details but no development. What you'll find is development's quite costly in terms of time. You can't develop every single point. What you'd end up doing there is not getting to the end of the answer. So at least twice a paragraph, just pick your most significant details to develop. For paper 1, question 3, we can see you've got 15 marks available for reading, 10 for writing. Couple of quick tips that they're giving you here. Voice, audience, register, purpose. They've written it as perspective, audience, purpose, and form. Use the bullet points for your topic sentences. Make sure you cover beginning, middle, and end. Sometimes there might be 2 parts to one bullet point. Don't let that trick you. Make sure you catch both. Don't quote unless it's technical words. Focus on feelings and why characters behave as they do. Note the emphasis on feelings. It's not just a facts-based answer. And you shouldn't be just inventing completely new ideas. Make them plausible. Base them on evidence from the passage. For your writing, for the entire task, stay in the correct persona. Stay in the correct persona. Don't drift out. You need a logical and careful sequence. Don't turn from a magazine to a report or a journal. Keep it focused on what it should be, and correct your answer at the end as well. Tips for the writing paper are very similar. You can see the mark scheme is basically the same. It's just the emphasis has changed. Now it's 25 for writing and 15 for reading. A couple of extra things to worry about here because so many marks are available for writing. Tenses need to stay consistent. A lot of people start present trying to be flashy, drift into past and lose marks for that. Also, make sure you've got discourse markers or signposting words, and vary your sentence openings and lengths. Varied openings and lengths are very important. Then we also have the emphasis on beginning, middle, and end again. You're being asked to criticize or question ideas or attitudes. So you shouldn't be reading this passively. You're supposed to engage in a critical way with the material in the extract. Some ideas in depth shows you don't have to develop all ideas in depth. So prioritize which ones are going to be important and don't drift away from the bullet points.